we're
If
we're good now.
my wife says if my mouth gapes open, it's something really has my attention. I'm like,
But
Yes.
it's just your screen freezing up and it's hysterical.
So
take a
this
screenshot.
this website, this Saturn Death Cult website, dude. Holy
Oh, that
shit!
Yeah,
was
y'all
great.
lost. So
I'm
we're about to start here on Twitch, Infidels. So bring it up, SaturnDeathCult.com if you want to follow along. That's tonight's show, and there's so much on there. We're pumped. We got a special guest, Troy McLaughlin, going to join us about 15 minutes, Infidels. But y'all all, it's twitch.tv/Conspiracy Horsemen.
Oh, we started?
Yes, we are starting now, moron.
Okay, let me hit record.
Is this thing on? Is this thing on?
Yes, hit record. Because you're here with the Conspiracy Horsemen on the exclusive 24 hours of Twitch, the live video feed, Infidels. And it's Hacker Hameen, it's Greek God Papadon, it's Big Stevie Richards, and Big Sal Graziano. I always say big, but it's Dancing Steve. Big Stevie Cool, Dancing Stevie Richards. And that's right, Infidels, because I'm the God who's the head of the lords. Bin Hameen from the Horseman Squad. Can I get raw? Yes, we get dirty to the floor. Rhymes hitting on your mind you could never ignore. And you can't ignore us, Infidels, or all of the indoctrination that's going around the world for Saturnalia. Now, past this holiday, for every religion, we're going to expose them all from the top down because it's all this Illuminati, NWO, Kabbalist, and we're going to cover it all in the early days of planet Earth to the planet that's fallen right now, and it's all because of Saturn and because you've been indoctrinated here on the Conspiracy Horsemen. YOLO. Yes, we are here, guys, live on Twitch, first exclusive 24 hours, and if you're catching the replay on hackerhameen.podbean.com or on iTunes or on Stitcher, we appreciate you. I know Stevie's probably rolling with the exclusive video in the Hameen Media Discussion Group, so if you're checking us out there, we appreciate it, but you can always hop over to twitch.tv/Conspiracy Horsemen. Join us live, join the interactive chat. Stevie's monitoring it so you can hit us up with any questions you might have. Been looking into some of the stuff that we covered last week from the Conspiracy Horseman mailbag for the end of the year. So if you want to send us any new stuff, conspiracyhorseman@gmail.com. We want to be as interactive as possible. But right now I want to say Happy New Year, Happy 2018 to my Conspiracy Horseman brothers. Big Sal, how you doing, bro?
Good, brother. Good. Happy New Year to all you guys. I think we all talked to each other at like 8 o'clock
Yeah.
that day because everybody's like, I'm going to bed soon. And
Some old men.
what about you, Stevie? I was going to say, Stevie Richards was up late last night watching Raw. So
Yeah, I know. He way past his
he
bedtime.
looked shot.
Oh, I still haven't recovered from that, man. Not just staying up late, just watching that 2 hours. It was just like, as a joke, I was like 1 minute in, I messaged everybody, hey, is the show over yet? With 15 minutes in, I was actually dead serious. Is this over yet?
Yeah. That show will never be over. Not till 2020, maybe.
What the Russo show is funny because everything he was saying was us on our Facebook message. And that's why I said to him,
Yeah.
you looking at our Facebook messages? Because it was just, it's as plain as day how bad it is.
Yeah, well,
New
for
Day?
anybody in the know, yeah, it's as plain as the new day.
Everybody
No,
just
it's not
fucking
Star.
pump
Okay,
the
I
brakes,
know.
please.
Already triggered.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Shut that shit down.
Wait, are we on?
Yeah,
Did we start yet?
we've been started. Yeah, it was a good night on Russo for our premiere last night. We appreciate it. We put the Horsemen over strong. At the end of the show, we didn't even plug our pro wrestling tees sites. That's how strong we put over Horsemen last night, boys. So, it was good. Definitely Stevie set me up for about 3 times to make sure I'm never getting a job. I came through with, flying colors, and it was a good time. I think Vince enjoyed it without having to deal with any bullshit of his co-host fighting, doing some infighting. So,
Bro,
it
what
was
does
a
that
good
mean?
time. Yeah, you heard me.
What does that mean?
Yeah. But regardless, Stevie, happy 2018, man. Just started my Stevie Richards Fitness band workout today, man. Those bands you had us order they're legit, man. I got to say that it's a quality product. We were putting over earlier. We weren't sure if your Asian wife was making them in the basement. If you got a
In her
sweatshop,
sweatshop with her 11 kids.
God,
Ni hao
all their
ma.
cats, they're not
Ni hao
kids.
ma.
But it is a quality product. What is it? Lifeline bands? Is that what they're called?
Yeah. The amazing thing is, I think WWE Creative actually does their marketing because the 120-pound bands are $30, but the 60-pound bands are $70. So
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Look at-
But it was, I've snapped those Walmart Gold's Gym bands left and right, and these are way more heavy duty. The handles are great. So if you're interested in joining our group, absolutely hit us up on Twitter, me or Stevie, and we'll be happy to add you in. But really great product, super cheap price, and I'm looking forward to making it through 12 weeks and becoming the leader of the Blue World Order. So I'm pumped about
Oh,
it.
thank you. I was begging somebody to take my place, just like Batman at Dark Knight.
Yeah, well, I'm taking Nova's spot. You're not the
Or
leader.
symbolism. I'll take the symbolism at Dark Knight any day. You can indoctrinate me into that movie anytime. So I watched it 1,000 times. But real quick thing. First and foremost, the 12-week can actually be scaled over the course of almost a year, the way I did it, where you can redo it. Obviously, the modifications make it a longer program. And also throughout the year with the Facebook groups, if you purchase the program, you get access to the, who named this, by the way? SRF HMG.
Stevie Richards Fitness Hacker Hameen Media Group.
Better just spell it out at this point. But you'll get access to that. And I did my first Facebook Live. I'm going to continue to do regular intervals of Facebook Lives, which just aren't going to be me sitting there talking, but actually demonstrating some of the movements, modifications, helping them with certain sunrise, sunset. That's right.
Yeah.
I stole that from Athlete X. At least I'm honest.
They stole it from Fiddler on the Roof, so it's good.
They stole it from Flat Earthers. Flat Earth, flat abs coming out later on this year.
Hell yeah.
Excellent.
But GGP, man.
Was it you, Sal?
Yeah, it was Sal.
All I want is 10%. Give me 10%, brother. Rest is yours, buddy. You're doing the legwork.
Not gross.
Kind of gross.
Live from the Apple Store on his iPhone XS there. It's our boy GGP, Greek God Papadon, my tag team partner, Dynasty Tag Champs. What's good, brother? That's right.
Merry New Year to one and all. Anyway, what's up, boys? It's been very interesting 2018, to say the least. The way we just started off. We started off hot. Got some great news this morning from Ben Hamin's information center. And I'm not going to jinx it. I'm not going to say anything about it, but it did make my morning. And now we're going to talk about something that's very interesting today, the whole Saturnalia phenomenon. And I had the opportunity, I think it was yesterday, to see Stevie Richards on Facebook Live. I even put him over, said he was the man. It was a very good video, and I do instruct and many individuals who want to get in shape to give this an opportunity and to try it out, because Stevie, obviously, for being 78 years old, looks phenomenal. So, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He's not looking just to rip you off and, every time the cameras are on, just act like a saint. And when the cameras are off, be a freaking carny bastard, because he'll just be a carny bastard to your face and when the cameras are on. So you're good to go. So at least he's honest about that.
You know what I'm pumped about?
It started out really good.
Real strong. Yeah.
But listen, in actuality, if you guys want to get in shape, big shout out to Demetrius Zordis for trying to get in shape. And I'm looking forward to see his progress, because let's face it, if you can get the guy who makes donuts every day get in shape, then you're doing something right. And your ultimate test will get the Gordito Dorito Big Ray in shape. Then you'll be in a good standing. You'll put that DDP video to rest, where the guy can't walk. He has the sticks. All you have to do is show that picture of that fat, watered down bootleg Fat Joe looking guy before. Jesus. And now
I know you're gonna give me heat, man. Here we go. Here we go.
Phone's ringing already.
Tell him you love him. Just tell him you love him.
Good news. I have some good news. I do the check now. I have the browser open, and actuality is actually a word. So, there we go. I stand corrected.
The gimmick
stand
is
correctified.
You better stay corrected, because the smoke just settled there, you prick.
Yeah, but we want to say happy 2018 to all the Horsemen followers out there. People have been signing up for Twitch. I'm getting all those emails at hackerhameen@gmail.com that I'm seeing people on Podbean, seeing people on Twitch just following us. So the more we expand, the more we want to say we appreciate you guys for all that support. And really, we hit record numbers right at the end of the year at hackerhameen.podbean.com on downloads. So it's just been great. And now the opportunity with Russo to bring over people from his platform who enjoy our commentary. And then we're just going to expand minds, because they're going to be tired of some bullshit wrestling. But when they hear this show, they're going to love it. I have no doubt about it, you guys. So
I'm glad to see you guys back with the pros.
finally. And the cons, I guess, right?
Oh.
Bong.
Oh, Bazinga.
Well played.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Stevie, what's up with the sleeves?
Yes, there it is. The first gun show of 2018.
Start
Now
tanning
it's a
for a
party.
big one on Saturday.
Before I
Tan back.
before I jump in and bring our guest on here, Troy McLaughlin from SaturnDeathCult.com, definitely wanted to say to put over the Wolfgang Helbig episode. I uploaded on my YouTube, and man, I don't know if it was controlled opposition, paid trolls, or what have you, but I got so many fuck you style messages and burying Wolfgang. And it was even from people that believe it's a hoax were burying Wolfgang. And I would just babyface be like, hey, I'm happy to look at any proof you want to send my way. Nobody would come back with shit on both sides. You know what I mean? And I'm still believing. I'm in Camp Wolfgang right now, and I was looking for any way to get a hold of Leonard Posner, but that guy's MIA online. So,
He's the Ghost Warriors tag team partner. That's why.
It could be the Ghost Warriors tag. I blocked that guy. He got hot as shit too. So, yeah. Well, I mean, you don't know what I'm trying to do. I want people to jump the rail at a show just so I can destroy them with the flagpole. Like,
Haven't you learned your lesson yet?
No, I want to
Don't
beat.
worry.
Didn't you make that fucking guy go PTSD?
Yeah. I want to beat the shit out of stupid fans. Please try and jump the rail at a show and see what happens to you. It's only going to
Hopefully
give me
when all
more.
four of us are in the ring booked. That would be amazing.
Yep. Yeah. I would
You
just.
know what though? You know what would happen if that would happen if all four of us were there?
Oh.
Okay.
We'd be pulling that old woman off of Stevie. Getting all fucking sapiosexual on him.
Only if she had money, I'd sue her fucking ass off. That's what I'd do.
You don't know how much they
want.
put away from their meth business. I mean, those were some straight up summer teeth right there, bro. Those.
Oh my god, dude! You just trumped my joke. I can't even follow that, motherfucker. You buried me.
Yeah, I'm on it
I was
tonight.
gonna say Stevie would hold out to throw the last punch so he can get paid more because he had to work twice. But whatever.
That's actually a good point. I'm not going to fight now.
Yeah, you're not going to get any money from them unless it's the first of the month. That's it right there. I'll tell you that.
Don't worry. Over at
Wow.
Dynasty, at Chris Envy's place, you and I will start a riot.
Yeah, I'm down, man. There's usually a lot of little kids at those shows, but
Oh, I will fucking slap a kid.
yeah, I will too. Absolutely.
Bring the
$5.
fucking little kids ride of little kids. Just getting their ass kicked.
Line them up.
Just fucking stabbing them with pitchforks and throwing
No, come on, man. No.
What? What? Now it's
We can't talk about
it's
New Day,
too
but you're gonna talk about smacking kids? Come on.
because that's not funny when you talk about New Day.
Oh, it's
Fucking
hilarious. Vince does it, man. I'm
Pitching little
sorry.
kids is funny.
No, it's
Can't
not.
believe it. Dude. We appreciate all the fans out there.
Yes, we do.
And if you're a little
plus,
kid
if
watching this show,
If you're a little kid watching this, your parents should be kicked in the balls. Because they're-
actually
And
they
if you
probably
beat up
are
little
because they're
kids,
on
who's
Twitch.
Stevie gonna have in his... Well, that's true.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, if you beat up little kids, who's Stevie's wife gonna have in the basement making the bands?
that's right.
You're gonna affect
Honorable-
his income.
Is it 6:30 already?
It
Do we have
is
enough heat
6:30,
yet?
baby. We gotta bring on our
It's cold
guest here.
outside.
Let
We're
me
gonna get a
find
snowstorm
Troy.
in New York. I need all the heat I can get.
Add to group call Skype. He's not gonna have video, but there's a nice picture of him by a pond.
What's his dude's name again?
Troy McLaughlin. Hey Troy, how are you, man? Welcome to the Conspiracy Horsemen. A little bit more loose and free flowing than some of the other shows you've been on, but right now you're on with 4 loony bastards, 4 professional wrestlers, and hey, I want you guys to mind your manners because this guy's an English gentleman right here, and you're gonna straighten up and fly right in this locker room.
Hey guys, how are you?
How are you, sir?
How you
I'm
doing?
well, thank you.
Good.
No,
Very good.
I feel free to give him the business, guys, because I was all trying to be proper on the Infinite Fringe, and then he stooged off later that he was all into fight sports and he knows promoters, so he knows the backside shadiness of
knows
the
the deal.
business. Then so
Tremendous.
Where in England are you at?
Currently, I'm in a place called March. It's in Cambridgeshire, just up from the famous Cambridge University, up the road from there, and not too far away from where Prince William and that live.
Okay, and since I have to be a mark, I have to ask everybody from the UK. Do you know the radio personality Martin Evans?
No, and this is the thing. I'm a newbie here in the UK. I've only been here about 3 years now, and so on. My background is more New Zealand and Hong Kong.
Oh, cool.
So
Do you know Stevie Richards' wife?
I do not.
She's not Asian. She's blonde. My God.
She's Blasian.
Do you know? Do you? So if you're from New Zealand, do you know Mana by any chance? The wrestler known as Mana. Nick?
No, I'm
trained
not
with
really.
Alpha?
No, I'm not really up with the wrestling scene in New Zealand. Knew a little bit about the MMA scene in Hong Kong. I only got involved with the people there because I was involved in the film industry, at a very sort of low level, and you meet lots of guys who are getting into the stunt side of things. Yeah, stuntmen.
Yeah.
They're all martial arts guys, ex-wrestlers, that kind of thing, and that's how I ended up finding my way into Muay Thai kickboxing tournaments and filming some of that stuff. So, the only time I've ever been in the ring is as an amateur boxer in my younger years. So, and I love I love all sorts of versions of the fight game.
Well, there's your in, Papa Don. Get over to Hong Kong as a stuntman extra, and the office should be calling pretty soon after that.
Sure, why not? I'll take a flight to Hong Kong.
You'll have fun, mate. It's a great town to go and do that kind of stuff.
The Greeks invented MMA.
They did.
I was trying to cut it off before you said that. Sir, first of all, I want to say I watched a couple of the interviews on YouTube that you've done, and I want to apologize for how this compares to that, first and foremost. But wow, I mean, I'm going to start off with Ben, but I just want to say, when I listened to you on the Infinite Fringe, and I checked out the Saturn Death Cult website, and previously I didn't even realize I was watching the. It just blew all of our minds. It's insane to think, first and foremost, that Saturn was our sun before the sun that we have now. It's just, I don't even know if that's where we start, Ben, or.
Yeah, I think, for obviously our fan base, and I'm not trying to degrade anybody wrestling fan wise who's followed us over here, because I wasn't, super well. I knew of the Saturnalia and whatnot, but what really I learned in the research and following Troy's work, took it to a whole nother level. So, Troy, if you could just let us know the early phases of that Saturn was our sun, and kind of break that down for us, and what happened to take us to the heliocentric model now, I think would be a great place to start.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's probably the most difficult part of the Saturn Death Cult thesis for most people to accept, i.e. that the Earth was originally a satellite of a brown dwarf star, and that this brown dwarf star was catastrophically captured by the sun, and eventually it would become the planet Saturn, where it shone as a sun-like object at Earth's northern skies, about where you see the pole star today, and was eventually destructively displaced to its current position in the solar system's outer limits. Of course, amongst the electric universe model proponents, which is an alternative physics for looking at how the universe works. This is called Saturn Theory, and it's obviously deemed preposterous by mainstream science, which promotes the gradualist uniformitarian process as an explanation for the formation of the solar system. But basically, mainstream science will tell you that the skies we see today have been largely the same for at least the last 2 billion years or so, and certainly within human existence, but a reading, and this is crucial for people to understand, it's a reading of comparative ancient mythology and its archetypes. When read through the filter of planetary catastrophism, which can offer a very different perspective, which tells us that the ancients saw a very different sky to the one we see today. In fact, it was a very frightening sky compared to what we see today. So this is one of the reasons why in the book that I put out a few years ago now, the Saturn Death Cult, it's incumbent on me to offer an alternative cosmology to explain how this mythical golden age period when Saturn was our original sun, or how the mythologies present the planet Saturn, it's important for us to offer a cosmology that basically leads to what's called Saturn Theory within electric universe circles.
And I just want to like kind of paint a picture for our listeners when we say that, everything we've been taught, whether it's prehistoric era or whatnot, under this model, it's showing that, there was no night and day, that Saturn was our sun at that time, and the Earth wasn't rotating, so we didn't have really a night and day type feature. Everything was always cascaded in purple. Plant life would have been more of a red hue based on the low light conditions that were going on there, and things like even gravity would have been lessened. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct. You're describing effectively the primordial condition of the Earth when Saturn was out in space outside of the influence of the sun. The primordial side of things, often referred to in many cultures as a purple dream time, the dream time, purple dawn. You get this kind of eternal gloom of what would you call it? Not night, but that sort of magic hour, twilight. Exactly, yeah. That's the word I was looking for. It's a twilight in a purple hue that a brown dwarf would shed upon a satellite, a moon, so to speak, when in its own environment. This lasts, of course, until such an object, as a brown dwarf star, is captured by a main sequence star, and you get a massive electrical rebalancing take place, a flaring up of that star. And this is where mythology really kicks in, because we know about this purple dawn period from mythology in contrast to what they then experienced, which was the sudden blaring light that filled the Earth, turned everything completely different in terms of their experience, and at the same time created a situation where inhabitants of the Earth could actually see out into the greater cosmos. They could see stars which had been hidden by what electric universe proponents call a plasma sheath. And this, of course, led to the ability to calculate time. Suddenly you had an astronomical reference from which to see how the passage of time passed. And we see the mythologies credit this to the god Saturn, which is associated with the planet Saturn, obviously. And it really just boils down to a flaring of that object and the loss of its plasma sheath. And at that time, many of the mythologies talk about a distant star, a distant sun that is coming into, starting to influence things on Earth, while at the same time this original flared sun that they called Saturn rules from its northern position. And of course, what we can assume from that is that the inhabitants basically witnessed the capture of Saturn, witnessed the sun as it was first of all a distant and then an approaching object, and eventually over a period of time Saturn was displaced. But that period up to Saturn's displacement by the sun was effectively what mythology calls the Golden Age. It's considered a beautiful age, but it's probably best to understand it. It was a golden age because humans were freed from this primordial, sort of lost in time world that they were involved in. And they were suddenly able to measure time, which led to the measurements of lots of other different aspects of their life. And so subsequently you get the march of civilization. It all comes to a shocking end when Saturn is displaced. This is what has come down to us as the archetype of doomsday. And, then you get a series of planetary realignments that basically is in evidence in mythology, probably as recently as 500 BC, before it really settles down to the sky that we see today.
Get him, Sale.
No.
All right, I just,
I
go ahead,
just,
Stevie. Yeah.
Well, one of the things watching that and watching other documentaries about Saturn, the symbology on this planet with mainstream media, we talked about before with predictive programming, it's just amazing. Especially when we talk about brands, we all try to be a different brand in the wrestling business. It's amazing that it's all kind of based in Saturn. No matter what you look at, with car emblem logos on the front, other companies, corporations, the chevrons,
Internet
space
Explorer.
agencies.
Yeah.
It's all pretty uniform, which is pretty crazy. And just one more thing about predictive programming. And I don't know if you ever noticed, I'm a science fiction fan, but Star Trek or any other science fiction or cartoon-based thing, it has that purple hue at the beginning of time. It's pretty uniform. It seems like there's no discussion of interpretation when it comes to that. It seems like it's pretty much known that it had a purple hue. This was the beginning of time, which goes in line with what I'm reading on SaturnDeathCult.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're saying about the prevalence of Saturn symbols. This was my main motivation for writing the first half of the book, was to show the origins of this this particular symbology that we see around us. And once you have that clue, you see how the archetype is completely, I would say, infected. But because I believe that a lot of it has actually been, debased and given a very sinister sort of undercurrent to it. But you see where it is in all of our symbology. It becomes a key that allows us to basically see it for what it is.
Well, just so our readers, our listeners can understand, I went to the website, SaturnDeathCult.com. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to read through the entire website because of time, but
And your lack of reading.
yeah, readings. Yeah, my lack of
When's
reading.
the audiobook come out? Sorry.
Anyhow, point is, the history lesson I want to tell the fans so they're not lost in the dark is, one, go to the website, SaturnDeathCult.com. It is interesting beyond belief. But basically, the backstory is that Earth was in a system with Saturn, which collided within the sun system, and that's how everything got messed up, correct?
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, and in layman's terms. And we have to speak in layman's terms because wrestling fans aren't the smartest people in the world. Okay.
Neither are wrestling podcast hosts. But
Yeah, I guess not.
Probably not a good time to plug your T-shirt store popping on.
In my opinion, it'll probably make them more open to a different alternative view. It's the highly educated people that give the most pushback.
Sure.
Because it's basically it's such a change to the accepted not demagoguery, but the accepted way of thinking that. And particularly when somebody's salary is dependent on the old model being true, that this is the kind of stuff that really gets their backs up. And whereas I think other people who haven't been, haven't sort of dedicated themselves to the mainstream sort of ideal, they're a little bit more open-minded, and it's a journey that they can probably enjoy. A lot more than the more educated or so-called educated class.
Yeah, well, they want escapism in wrestling, and this is a great thing imagination-wise for our sci-fi fans as well. And we actually have two ECW legends as co-hosts on the show, and there was a team called the Eliminators, and they were Cronus and Saturn was the name of this tag team. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not. Yeah, so whenever you're coming out with the second book, you can throw in a wrestling chapter if you want. But because that's kind of what sparked this of having this topic this week, as we were talking about the Infinite Fringe and how interesting that show was when we did it. And I was wondering, where that came from. And then our other co-host, Greek god Papadon, who is, up on all Greek mythology, and obviously the god of Saturn goes by many names. Kronos,
Kronos
El,
is the Greek version.
yes, and El and Ra, if I'm not mistaken in there, even though they say it's the sun god, it's not the sun that we think of. It's as the sun when it was the dwarf sun. Am I correct?
Yes, it is unfortunate that one of the great problems in modern academia is that they've perpetuated the idea that the ancients were sun god worshippers, as in the sun we see today. And the reason that this came about is there's a particular individual from the 1800s, a guy called John J. O'Neill. He started noticing that, like a lot of the academics at that time, understood that the Saturn god and all its derivatives, whether it's Mesoamerican culture, whether it's Greek, whether it's Egyptian and so on, it's this restive object that seems to be associated with the polar north. And this just didn't fit what we saw in the skies today. So basically they took the square peg of the mythology and decided to hammer it into the round hole of what we see today. And that's where you get this misidentification going on. They recognize that that this god and its various incarnations is associated with the North Pole star, but they can't reconcile it with the astrophysics of what we see today. And so subsequently, we do have this problem where if you go into the accepted history books and so on, you'll read about Egyptians worshiping that god that comes from the west and sets from the east and sets in the west, this is just one of those sort of confusing aspects about trying to understand the madhouse of mythology and where we sit with what Saturn actually is in the mythology.
Well, I got a quick question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
When Earth wasn't in the heliocentric universe, and it was just with Saturn itself,
Mm-hmm.
was the Earth rotating as well like it is now, or was it not rotating? It was just still and just following it like on its tail end as it was moving through the solar system or through the galaxy?
There are a number of competing, theories with this. I tended to go with a guy called Eduardo Cardona, who basically had the idea that this brown dwarf star was traveling north in relation to the galaxy towards the sun, with the Earth in tow and Mars in tow at that time. And so therefore it rotated on an axial, below the sun, so that the North Pole was facing Saturn's South Pole, and the two spun axially in alignment with each other. A guy called Thornhill, an Australian physicist, electric universe proponent, he's got an idea which I'm starting to go more towards, and that is that the Earth existed in the same way that the moon exists with our planet. It's got one side facing the Earth at all times, and that's what's called a phase lock system. And so basically it would have rotated around Saturn, but with what is our North Pole constantly pointed at Saturn, in the same way the moon is constantly pointing one side of itself at Earth. When Saturn approached the sun and started to electrically sense the sun's heliosphere, that created an acceleration process, an attraction. That these things happen within the electric scheme of things, and that acceleration would have dragged the Earth into a southerly position below Saturn's South Pole, where it would have remained during the approach and the eventual capture phase, and for a period of time after the capture, before effectively being severed from its host brown dwarf star. I think that sort of plays that is a better description of how things happened, and we do actually have observed events where we have seen exactly this kind of behavior in the cosmos, although a lot of mainstream scientists don't know exactly what they're looking at and have never addressed this. But do you remember that comet Shoemaker-Levy that crashed into the planet Jupiter a couple of decades ago, caused a big fireball in Jupiter's atmosphere? The interesting thing about Comet Levy was that it broke up into 21 separate pieces as it passed Jupiter, as it became captured by Jupiter. And those 21 pieces, bizarrely to the mainstream mind, formed into a coaxial aligned, what people have called a string of pearls. And it wasn't like the first one was leading and the rest were following. They just became a column of 21 objects that rotated in axial alignment with each other, and basically ended up crashing into the surface of Jupiter. So we have actually seen this exact kind of phenomenon at a smaller scale, spectacular as it might have been. But yes, I would say that that's what I'm starting to favor, that the Earth started in phase lock, but eventually was dragged into its coaxial alignment during the capture process and was eventually severed from Saturn during that process.
That's awesome. I mean, incredible just to think of a different model from what we've been, conditioned to for years and years and years. And it's as simple as magnets, South Pole, North Pole. If it's the South Pole of that and the North Pole of the Earth, aligning along those lines. But to get into a little bit, not that that isn't the sexy talk, Avi, but you say the word death cult, and that definitely spikes the hairs on people's necks. But we're coming out of what many people know as Saturnalia during the holiday season. We celebrate Christmas, but really it's part of just a greater indoctrination ceremony. And if you look at Saturn being aligned with our North Pole, and there's all of the anagrams for Santa and Satan, and that Kronos is really a form of the devil, and that's what all these elites worship. Very interesting that how stories get changed to be able to be spoon-fed to the babes in the woods, so we can keep on the program. So I think that it's a good place to switch gears here after we've kind of explained of where it was in phase lock, or how our Earth was.
Just real quick, when I was reading, excuse me, when I was on Troy's page, and I was looking at his Kubrick stuff. Yeah. Because I followed like a lot of the Kubrick symbols I thought was really great. And when I was reading it on his page, and they were talking about how it switched from in 2001 from Saturn, they changed it over to Jupiter.
Yeah, according to Jay Widener. Yeah. Right.
But now, even like you're saying now with the how Saturn and Jupiter still connect. There's still that slight connection with the meteor hitting it and breaking up into 21 parts, and still hitting Jupiter. It's just kind of funny how it follows itself.
Well, Jupiter actually plays a very important later role in actually pushing Saturn off its perch. And for a brief period of time, it was to the inhabitants of the Earth the dominant celestial body in the heavens. And of course, in mythology, what you're actually looking at is in terms of the particularly Greek mythology, you're talking about why has it suddenly gone from my mind? What's Jupiter's equivalent in Greece? Zeus. That's correct. Yes. Sorry. Zeus is brought in. He's kept out of Kronos's grasp, because Kronos is in the process of eating all his children, worried they're going to take over from him. And he eventually Zeus eventually commits patricide on Kronos, defeats the king, and replaces the king. Kronos' position as the great created god. So yes, they are very much linked in. And I have co-authored a book called Cosmos and Collision, which is a much more detailed, much more academically robust book that discusses what we would call the antique solar system, what was happening in the solar system on the approach of Saturn, and what was happening around Jupiter at that particular time. and basically how this whole capture process was set up with regards to planet Jupiter as well. So call it a prequel to Saturn Death Cult, but it's a lot more of a scientific treatise than Saturn Death Cult, which is more an introductory attempt at all these sorts of questions.
Yeah, I like how it talks about eating its kids, even though that's all the mythology of it, there isn't really a figure or God doing that. But, as far as ancient times where it's planets taking over and becoming realigned and that story is handed down. And I was going to ask, what people was it? Was it Egyptians who, even though there wasn't probably borders them and them referring to themselves as that, or Mesopotamians, or was it Greeks that were the ones that were to first put these stories together, this lineage together?
There's no first. It's the phenomenon is that you see this shared culture throughout the world. The Chinese are talking about it. The Mesoamericans are talking about it at about the same time. The Polynesian peoples have memories going back to this time. The Hindu traditions are rich with this story, and you can, in many respects, Greek Roman mythology is a Johnny come lately in this. Biblical accounts are pretty ancient, but Mesopotamia and Egypt is the one that we tend to look at simply because that's what's been focused on in terms of the archaeological history. But these other cultures, they're absolutely imbued with exactly the same archetype stories. They just got different names, which is to be expected.
Sure.
Well, that's even all the mythology. These places who never had contact with each other.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a dragon myth.
Yep, that's right.
Every language has a word cannibal in it.
Yep.
So, these things were happening all over the place, and these people never met. There was never an exchange of information or.
Yeah.
They all talk about a great flood or destruction.
Yeah.
Correct.
And they all talk about, stuff from the sky that came down to them and offered them things. And so,
crucially, they all have a doomsday archetype. And that doomsday archetype is very much centered around a trio of gods, which in the Greco-Roman sort of pantheon, it is the Saturn, Venus, Mars sort of lineup of planets. And every single culture has a variation on this, but they basically tell the same story. And I have to say as well that a lot of our mythologies have been sort of adapted to the modern mind to make it a little bit more coherent. If you read the mythologies in some of the ancient texts and you read a straightforward translation, this stuff is a madhouse if you think it's just purely a reflection of what was going on amongst humans on Earth, if it was our imaginations or something, if you take the Freudian sort of approach to it. It's an absolute madhouse. If you throw in the planetary angle to it, you start to get a better idea about what these guys were witnessing and how that influenced them. And that archetype of doomsday, we talk about the worldwide flood. This is the Atlantis sort of idea, this sort of thing. This is Saturn basically drenching the planet because brown dwarf stars are copious carriers of water. So much so that in a brown dwarf star environment, you really don't have space as we know it between us and the sun and other planets. You've probably got a mist, a water mist that permeates that sort of inner area. And when Saturn, was basically pushed off its perch, we were drenched. There's a few theories about how that happened. But those rings are made of water, and are the result of an ejection event that caused those rings to form. But
So
there was so much more water.
So it's almost like a fetus being in the womb type of scenario. Because
It's an egg.
Because you're saying that there was no space between Saturn and Earth, there was just fluid. So it's almost like a mother giving birth to a child, Once it's pushed out, it's all wet. Obviously,
Very much like that. Think of the plasma sphere almost as an egg shell or a placenta sort of idea, and you've got that. One of the great Saturn Theory guys, a guy called Alfred de Grazia. I think he just died at the grand old age of 97 or something.
Wow.
But he basically believed that in these kinds of systems, they would share a common atmosphere, a common mist, liquid water atmosphere. This basically also, explains why we have so much water on our planet. If I can boast of any one contribution to the electric universe, the hard science model, in such an environment, the brown dwarf star acts as a cathode, and the moon acts as an anode. Sorry, the other way around. Brown dwarf star is the anode, the moon is the cathode. And if you have an anode and a cathode in a misty water environment with an electrical current forming the interaction, you get basically what's called, I don't know, it must be late at night for me, electrolysis, where you get the separation of oxygen and hydrogen out of the water molecule, which explains why the Earth would be oxygen-based, whereas Saturn will be predominantly hydrogen-based in terms of its atmosphere. And that's because, it's a solution for why we have so much water and why we are only the second body in the entire solar system that has an oxygen atmosphere.
Get him,
Very
Stevie.
interesting.
What do you got, Stevie? I don't want you checking out over there.
No. I'm just thinking about, as he's talking about all this stuff and the research we've done, and also, like I said earlier, watching that David Icke video on Saturn, it just blows my mind of all the uniform symbolism. And one thing to note, probably the biggest thing, being raised Roman Catholic, seeing the Pope with all that Saturn symbolism, seeing just basically the Catholic religion with all that symbolism, and also a lot of stuff with that going back to sun gods and the symbolism being the same, with what the Pope and people like in the Catholic religion wear. It just blows my mind how now, like, everything pretty much in the world that's put before us with mainstream media or religion or both is just based in this Saturn symbolism.
The whole cube thing.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
To see
right?
all those cubes everywhere, and like we've all seen those for years. And you look at it and you're like, oh, modern art, yay, hooray!
Or whether it's in Mecca, whether it's the Jewish faith where they're putting them on their head, and even what we're seeing in Egyptian hieroglyphs with these deities with the eclipsed sphere on their head, that's Saturn as well in the four phases of how it would eclipse in that time period. So what people might chalk up to one thing, they don't really realize how much symbolism across every religion, across every continent, and all people are really representing this. And that's what the Saturn, I don't know, the death cult we can get into in a little while, but the cult of it all, of making people do a pilgrimage to Mecca, or whether it's some modern art installation or outside some corporate entity, it's right there, or your Internet Explorer browser itself with a ring of Saturn around it.
Yeah. I just want to follow up with one quick thing on that. I've read throughout the site. I've seen the depopulation. Actually, I live not too far from the Georgia Guidestones. I plan to go out and visit those. Yeah. So I'm not very excited about it, but it's kind of cool in a really morbid way. But here's the thing, NASA and all these government agencies are coming out with all this. There's exciting life in other places. We found the TRAPPIST system. We found these planets that are inhabitable. We found all this crazy stuff going on in the universe. Why wouldn't they be excited to tell us, hey, Saturn used to be our sun? Isn't that like crazy? And people would be like, probably, yeah, big deal. What are the Kardashians doing? That's probably how they would answer it. But why are they kind of taking these baby steps for their disclosure of what the origins of the Saturn death cult is?
Well, my answer to that is that they have been so imbued since the time of Copernicus, Galileo, with this idea of our solar system having been formed over a period of time, the uniformitarian sort of idea, that when they started actually discovering exoplanets, it just simply didn't match what's called the accretion disk theory. All right. Now, the accretion disk theory is that around the sun in primordial times, you've got this great cloud of dust that's a disk. Somehow it all gets glued together in various shapes, different types, and they become the planets. The problem with it is that when you look very closely at the accretion disk theory, it doesn't explain what we're seeing in every other exoplanet. We haven't found one system even remotely similar to our own in terms of the formation of the gas giants in relation to the terrestrial planets and so on. Our solar system actually seems to be the odd one out. But particularly when you hear about what's called hot Jupiters, these are Jupiter-sized planets, gas planets, that are as close to the Earth as Venus and Mercury are. And this shouldn't happen according to accepted astrophysics and planetary formation theory. It just simply shouldn't happen. And these theories are such a bedrock to a culture of this is how I make my money. That to basically tell somebody, all that stuff that you learned about planetary formation, it's gone. It's a shame because these people are not stupid people. They're exceedingly adept at understanding the scientific process and this stuff. So I don't criticize them from that point of view. But our academic system, and the difference in this is actually the Russians, but our academic system here in the West is one that is you follow your mentor and he gives you a degree which gives you the seat that gets you the money, you have your career. So you don't rock the boat. You just follow the pattern. And here's something, just, for somebody out there listening to this, just take note next time, whenever you hear a NASA press conference about something, when they land something on a comet or on a different planet, they almost always say, we were surprised. We are having to go back to the drawing boards and so on, all right? When you go and look at the Electric Universe guys and their prediction record, it's quite phenomenal. They're not surprised at all. They've predicted so many of the effects that people have been surprised by. I think the latest example is the landing on that comet when it turned out to be a big black rock and not some fluffy snowball. And Electric Universe says that basically comets are rocks. They're basically ejected parts of planets because of the catastrophic electric interactions between planets. They got ejected out into space, and they go outside of the sun's heliosphere. And when they come back in, they're electrically rebalancing, and that's what causes that glow. It's basically straightforward plasma arc mode for a celestial body.
So in essence, once again, some landmark discovery, some life-changing or reality-changing discovery or history is going to take a backseat to just being a slave to the financial system. That's pretty much all it is. And indoctrination.
As long as their salaries are dependent on the old system. I mean, these guys have got a lot of explaining to do. If it turns out, all that stuff we said about dirty snowballs and space being comets and so on like that, if it turns out to be totally untrue, then effectively their entire theoretical basis is rotten. And, these guys are pulling millions, if not billions, in terms of funding from governments to have come up with something that they're always saying, well, we're really surprised about this. We're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, well, I mean, this goes to one of a great page in the SaturnDeathCult.com is the gods, right? Of what they really worship, and that's guns. Forgive me, I forget what the O is. I know drugs, oil, drugs, and sex. Gods, So as the breakdown of what are they really trying to control from top to bottom, and what are they doing, whether it's Bohemian Grove and worshiping Moloch the owl, or the L. And I really wanted you to talk about that. I found that fascinating on the Infinite Fringe of the elite or the elite, or the angel Michael or Gabriel, or I think that's really hidden in plain sight of what we would never realize, and right there it is that EL. Now I'm looking for it everywhere I go, man. Give me a little heat on that.
Well, I'm always careful to try and emphasize to people that so much of what we know today is a distorted version of what was known in the past. It's distorted for reasons of gaining control, for various easy reasons. And I like to tell people that, the guys hanging out at Bohemian Grove now, and the guys who are running the banking system that finances all this to their benefit and so on, these guys are not your great-grandfather's elites. The intelligence levels, whether it's through another curse that they have, which is inbreeding, it seems to be a factor amongst the elites as they come down through the ages. Mm-hmm. This kind of behavior that we're seeing today is such a distortion that that they really don't even understand the distorted mythology.
Is it theater of the absurd? Is it just something for them to get over some latent homosexual tendencies or some sexual proclivity? Or I'm the resident atheist on this show, playing a Muslim extremist, and it's a lot of this stuff is just excuse for me, whether it's Vatican stuff or what have you, to what we call in wrestling kayfabe, what your shortcomings are, and hide behind whatever cloak or costume that you want it to be. However, it seems the people who are the most into this are the ones with the money and power. So not that I'm trying to put over that they're really gaining power from the planet Saturn by doing this ritualistic, whatever it is, kid diddling to orgies, eyes wide shut style, but it seems like there's some super elite club, and they're all doing it for some reason or another.
Well, I feel that it's come a long way from them believing in it. Like back in the day, they believed it, and they had
it's blackmail.
100% faith. Now it's more along the lines of, you do it too, so I know I'm safe to do it in front of you.
Sure.
And we know we can trust you. That's how I feel like it's become more of a, well, now you're one of us, you're not going to say anything.
What was the word you just said, Troy? Sorry.
That's a description of kakistocracy.
I thought you were making up words like Papa Don over there.
Okay.
Okay. Kakistocracy.
Kakistocracy. Kakis.
Wasn't it the father on Webster?
And it was Cac, Stevie, not Catristocracy.
Yeah, that's right.
So I got very excited.
Not my fault. They spelled it wrong.
So kakistocracy is just simply the rule of those least fit to rule, and the how you could say the need of those in power to make sure that those who support them are in it with them. And so people are compromised by doing things as that society would consider to be the worst attributes of human expression. And that basically gives you passport into the inner circles, the worse you become. This is, we are descending into and degenerating into a kakistocracy. The cycle repeats. We've had this before, and various cultures have it. I mean, you got to, if you want a kakistocracy to look at the Aztec culture that was destroyed by the conquistadors. Coming through, they had definitely degenerated into kakistocracy with cannibalism and such. We are on the cusp of that as a culture today. The Romans have been through it, and basically it's anybody entering a kakistocracy there has to be a control file on that person, so that that person is kept in line with the aims and objectives of those in power, and
but
that
you're
person,
you're a fight game guy. You like it. I mean, are you participating in that as well? Because you could say the same thing about UFC as far as, are we emulating the end of days with the Romans, and now we have in 219 Christy Cyborg versus Holly Holmes, which was a hell of a main event of two women who we want to look at as maternal back in the day, and homemakers, and now they're kicking the living shit out of each other. And then at the same time, we have New Day on WWE doing the exact same thing, and that it doesn't matter of whatever's going on over there. People are just saying yes to terrible ideas and putting it over of who should be in charge. Yeah, bread and circuses, absolutely.
I do believe that this is all symptomatic of it. Basically, the control file mechanism of bringing somebody in through initiation. We see this in the Masons down through history. We see this in various groups. I mean, the Nazis got involved in it.
Vril Society.
You can think of any sort of particular elite.
Yeah.
Ultimately goes down that route, and it keeps you in line. And
Skull and Bones and at Yale, right?
Yeah, Skull and Bones. That's a classic example. It's long rumored that John Kerry and Bush, have these photos of themselves in this coffin. Naked photos of themselves. This is the kind of stuff that keeps them in line. And it's an age-old technique. It's very effective, because there is always going to be this majority of people who just simply won't acquiesce to this kind of behavior. We just won't accept that, and so they've got to keep it to a certain degree hidden from the greater populace, while at the same time threatening to release it to the greater populace if you don't follow the rules. And this is what we find. I think you'll find this mostly in the bureaucracies of the world, and including the corporate bureaucracies. You climb the ladder, you become. Whether it's actually just criminal behavior, financial irregularities, and so on, you reach a certain point, and suddenly you're dealing in some pretty heavy stuff at the expense of innocence.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we just shared some stuff this morning, and what popped me the most on Infinite Fringe is you said that you feel the Saturn Death Call is taking a loss right now, that they're on the backside of the mountain going down. They're not as powerful as they once were, and even though we put over some of the things that Trump does, none of us are huge supporters or marks for him, but we're definitely of that elitist cabal, want to see them take a huge dive, whether it's Pizzagate, Pettigate, Fast and Furious gun running, whatnot. It seems like of the GODS, guns, oil, drugs, and sex, they're definitely getting their asses kicked on a couple of those fronts right now, and possibly if 2017, I've heard this, was the year of kind of either reckoning or getting things straight, 2018 is going to be the year of bringing them to justice. So it'll be very interesting to see who falls, and whether it's what we've seen with Hollywood and Washington D.C. with sexual assaulters that were in that obvious cabal of people who were indoctrinated, and you don't tell on me, and I'm going to get you in here, and you'll be able to siphon off money through lobbyists. That's going to come out very quickly and at a rapid rate right now. So who would have ever thought a sitting president of the United States would use the term deep state? Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's just a no-no. Deep state is actually the cacostocracy. It's this,
and even that's a rebrand of shadow government from Dick Cheney.
Precisely. He's used it in the "we've got to do something about it." This Trump, and as an observer of all this guy is a demolition man to these to the deep state.
Absolutely.
It's actually phenomenal to watch, and I think we've got this talk about this. Executive order that he signed on the 20th. But what sort of slipped under the mainstream media was this, and for me, this is incredibly interesting to watch as an observer, given that I've wrote a book called The Saturn Death Cult that concentrates on trafficking of women and children and their use in these horrendous activities. But Trump has declared, I believe, January, the National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. All right. Now, we've got all these planes going down to Guantanamo. There's been a huge increase in terms of all that sort of activity. We've got so many signs as to what may have been going on with the Clinton Foundation in regards to Haiti and activities down there. Something's about to break.
Yep.
And it's not good for them. It's not good for the deep state and these kinds of people. So
no, since they hammered Anthony Weiner, you knew it was coming. And even with the release off of his laptop of just some basic files, and the Stooge report coming out is that there's a video of Hillary and Huma Abedin with an underage child. I'm not sure if male or female. I'm going to guess female. That more is going to unravel, and not to revel in someone being taken advantage of, especially an underage child. But this is what I we had to set up the rest to get to this. I'd like to know some other things historically that would be in your book, and obviously want to plug all the books so you guys can pick them up. But, what don't we know about what they're doing ritualistically? I mean, we try and follow everything we can from Bohemian Grove to Skull and Bones, but it's all hearsay. What is some of the purpose behind this, and what are they actually trying to draw from that?
Somebody.
Hello?
Oh, no. Yeah. I would say that apart from control files on the bureaucracy that backs them up, that takes the paycheck that's drawn out of your taxes, my taxes, and so on, I would suggest that there is an addiction for adrenalized blood amongst the elites. I would suggest that caprophagia is a factor involved in this. That's the eating of feces. And I would say that if you want a historical example, and a lot of people, when you get into this kind of talk, naming names and giving examples tends to make it more real for people than talking in generalities. Now, in terms of the history of this stuff, there is one particular individual within the elites in the last 500 years who is probably a model for what is going on. All right. And that's a guy called Gilles de Rais. He was the Marshal of France, the benefactor and patron of Joan of Arc. Anybody heard of this guy?
I haven't. I thought you were going to say Aleister Crowley. No, go ahead. No.
Gilles de Rais is at the time of Joan of Arc. He was the richest man in France. Consider him in terms of wealth the George Soros of his day. Now, he started to lose his money and his wealth. Gilles de Rais is estimated to have debauched and murdered over 700 children. We know of 47 children that were pulled up from a well in one of his castles. He got so out of whack with things that he was selling castles to pay his debts when things were going badly, and he was forgetting they had all these bodies buried, all these boys and girls thrown down the well. Jesus. They were pulling these bodies out, decomposed, and carting them away as the new owners were coming in to the castle. It was that kind of crazy stuff. Now, he was involved with a guy called Prelate. Now, you don't know much about Prelate from history other than he supposedly told Gilles de Rais, hey, you want to be rich? There's certain rituals you can do. Now, Prelate was a link to the banking houses of Florence. And effectively, he gave he was a monk who was involved in banking in Florence. He gave Gilles de Rais a bunch of rituals which would supposedly allow him to gain wealth at that time. Now, this came out in the trials later that the Catholic Church held. Modern academia will tell you that these are trumped up charges. There's nothing to see here. That it's just basically people blackening the name. It wasn't as bad as it was said. There are other people that say, no, definitely, we know of 47. I mean, that's enough, just that alone. But there is an estimated over 700 of these kids. And things got worse and worse with these rituals, and none of the riches came through. And what money he did have went into Prelati's care, and he took it off to Florence, and that was the last Gilles de Rais saw of it before he was finally arrested and tried.
Yeah.
Now, Prelati, the only time you can find anything more about Prelati, he bizarrely turns up as a character in a role-playing game about vampires and blood-sucking and so on like that. I think it's called The Masquerade.
Masquerade.
So, yeah, the 90s sort of role-playing stuff. And that's the only other reference you have of him. Yet, we do know there was a Prelate involved with the Charles de Rais. And that is a classic example of how people in that rarefied air who live in those heights, how they think, how they ultimately degenerate and grasp at things when they start seeing things going wrong for themselves. Every rich person fears losing their wealth.
Yeah.
It's their biggest fear.
And they'll do anything to hold on to it.
They'll do anything to hold on to it. And that
46,
can benefit other
46 kids down a well, I'm fine with that. Once you hit 47, that's enough.
Well, it's no different than collateral damage with everything we did in Iraq, the Middle East. What we're trying to do is starting these wars. It's all for a pipeline or for oil, just like on the website.
We've just become more industrialized in how we approach this stuff.
I just have a quick question, Troy. What was the outcome of you said Del Rey was on trial? Duray?
Yeah.
What did they find him guilty? Did they hang him?
Yeah, they hang him. They hung him.
All right.
Which was incredible. I mean, basically, he should have been hung, drawn, and quartered, but he was a noble, so he gets to go out the easy way.
What's great now is we can actually do that on pay-per-view and charge, and then put the money back to where it
Well, I'm
should
saying
be.
that if he did it now, he'd get away, and he'd go live in Switzerland or some shit.
He'd get his own reality show and write a book.
Yeah.
What happened?
There's this sort of Colonel Kurtz type sort of behavior that could probably involve this kind of stuff. I do not put it beyond the realms of possibility that it has happened, is happening throughout the world with these people. They take a holiday somewhere, they pay for it. As I say, it's become industrialized since the days of Gilles de Rais. So Gilles de Rais is this guy in history who he's up there with the historical figures in terms of his nobility. He was connected. They don't come any higher than this. And here is a classic example of a guy committing some of the worst atrocities. If you read the details of what he was doing to these kids, it's up there with the Marquis de Sade's descriptions in his books and such. So
do you think that talking about atrocities against children, do you think all the stuff that's leaking out little by little, but hopefully there's going to be a huge disclosure on the Pizzagate stuff and the Podesta stuff and the emails and the servers? Do you think there was some weird symbolism in that pizza place too? Yeah, that I haven't really looked at lately, but because I don't really want to look.
Well, it was definitely Saturnalia on the Comet Ping Pong.
There's some Saturn symbolism.
It was right on there.
Yeah. Look, the connection there, the modern day thing, people also say, where is it in the 20th century? Yeah, we can point to the Nazis, we can point to Khmer Rouge, you can point to a lot of different sort of examples of, horrific acts. But the thing that I've tried to track down is the connection between religious ritual and art, and how, as we became more, how would you say, more rational, the same mentality that took ritual sacrifice in the Middle Ages and ancient times started moving into a sensibility of expressing it as a form of art. So you get a guy called, what's his name? De Quincey, I think his name was. Thomas De Quincey. He writes a treatise in the 1820s called On Murder Considered as One of the Fine Arts. And this ultimately sort of burrows down into the minds of the artistic set, who are inevitably aristocratic at the time, and the writings of the Marquis de Sade influence all this. And you arrive at a time in the 1920s where you have the advent of an art movement called surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, surrealism, to the people who practice it, is kind of a form of Freudian religion for them. They see it as a way of affecting the world around them. And according to some people who have written some great stuff on this, its greatest expression was probably in the murder of Elizabeth Short, otherwise known as the Black Dahlia. Probably the most infamous unsolved murder in Californian history, other than the Zodiac killings. And basically what you see is an example of elite ritual murder being played out as a form of art for those in the know. All right, it's displayed out in the in the public arena. Everybody is horrified by that. They get a kick out of that. But for those in the know, within the surrealism circles, the great art collectors, and this goes according to a couple of books that are looking into who murdered Elizabeth Short. The connections with the surrealist artists like Salvador Dali, Man Ray, his name escapes me at the moment, but also the connections into Hollywood directors like John Huston and such, and ultimately the influence into Roman Polanski, if you can remember Chinatown, the film that basically deals with incest, as a topic, and it stars John Huston in the role of the guy committing incest and so on. This story of linking the Black Dahlia killing as an example to a modern death cult ideology called surrealism that has done nothing but portray women in dismembered repose. It has that kind of symbolism, centered around it. Is, I believe, just yet another modern manifestation of a way of thinking that fits in with what I call a Saturn death cult culture. It's no different to what Charles de Rais was doing. These guys are, doing it under art. He was doing it under a form of alternative religion.
Get in, Papa Don.
Yeah, the quick question that I have, we were talking about how Saturn was the first sun, how it was the epicenter of the universe that Earth was a part of before it crashed with the sun universe, and whatever the case may be, planets were formed, and then planets were shifted, and sky changed, atmosphere changed, seasons came along, night and day started to occur, the moon ended up getting attracted to the Earth, so on and so forth. Now we're talking about, and because maybe it's just me, because I didn't get a chance to finish your website, read everything, I was so enthralled in reading whatever I read so far that due to time I couldn't finish. But where is the connection as far as, like, who started this all? Now you're talking about Charles de Rais being proposed by a monk to do rituals to Saturn so he can get his money back. But where's the catalyst or the genesis of where someone said, hey, let's start abusing children and killing children and
having orgies, like all that eyes
and,
wide shut
and
shit.
where's the connection between point A, which was the origin of Saturn in the universe, and B, what we're talking about now, which is the occult and the followers who are doing all this disgusting stuff?
Well, yeah, the connection is an understanding of what people believe the golden age under Saturn was, and this desire to get such a golden age back, that humanity is sort of in this process of having to climb back up to the heights of golden age Saturn, and to a large degree the belief that humanity is on its own and is responsible for pulling itself up. Hence, the modern approach to creating another golden age is a technologically driven approach, where they're looking for a technologically created immortality that was supposedly what was on offer during the mythical Saturn Golden Age, as they understand that. Now, in the book, what I introduce people to is this idea of the esoteric ages of man. You've got the Golden Age, followed by the Silver Age, followed by the Bronze Age, followed by an Iron Age, which is not to be confused with the historical demarcation, Stone Age down through to the Industrial Age. In the esoteric way of thinking, the Silver Age looks back to the Golden Age and tries to preserve what was learned. The Bronze Age of mankind sees the rise of mankind as his own god. It's basically the rise of the warrior class, the ability that by the strength of one's own arm, you can forge your own destiny, so to speak. By the time you get into the Iron Age, you're talking about a collective mentality that says we're all in it together. Let's do it all together. What's our lead? What should we be following in terms of leaders or ideology and so on? The Silver Age period provides the ideologies which become distorted by people who basically want to skip to a new Golden Age now. And I can't emphasize this enough that from a biblical point of view, the problem arises that when Adam and Eve are chucked out of the Garden of Eden, which is basically entering into the Silver Age period, the doomsday event, they're told that from there on in, they would have to, by the sweat of their brow, make the earth yield its fruits. And there is a group of people who just don't want to do that. They don't want to sweat, make their brow sweat to pull that. And they feel they can get other people to do this. And so they set up a system to try and enslave others to do their bidding. And they need about 10-to-1 as a ratio. You need 10 people, doing the job for you so that you can live without having to worry about where you're getting your next meal. And it's that process that brings about the financial system as the most effective means of making those 10 people do that for you. You can force them at the point of a sword, a gun. You can threaten them. You can you can try and seduce them with sex, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, if you can enslave them through debt, that's a much more effective way to keep everybody in line and provide that lifestyle. But in perpetuating that debt system, which when you actually look closely at how it is, how it's done, it's so obviously a scam that, I'm going to give you $10. I'm going to call these bits of paper $1. I'm going to give 10 of them to you. They are all as in existence. You're going to give me back 11 at the end of the year. If you can't give me back 11, I'm going to take all your stuff. Do you agree? Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I get the $10, don't I? And the end of the year comes, you're in debt. Now, they complicate it further through the system of finance that we have today. But basically, whole nations are now under a thing called, and America's nearly 20 trillion now.
Yeah.
All right. Which is something that you've amassed since 1913. You didn't have this in your previous history. You're now at $20 trillion in debt because somebody gave you a bunch of money and said, I want more back than actually exists.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve and the whole Rothschilds family, and that they
Creature of Jekyll Island.
Absolutely. I'm a... Oh.
Yeah, I say you're playing right in.
That's my trigger right there.
You're playing right into his hands. So really the question is, how many kids do we need to throw down a well to get out of $20 trillion debt? That's the equation we need to figure out.
But precisely what I was asking was, who was the first guy that says, hey, let's sacrifice 20 children?
I think, Pop, it gets to a weird point of where does the mythology of Kronos eating his kids when we come into a heliocentric model of old school, unenlightened man, and then that becomes some sexual proclivity of someone who was twisted.
It really comes down to the first guy who realized, hey, if I say this shit, I got these guys' ear.
Yeah.
Hey, they're listening to me. They're watching me. The first charismatic motherfucker who was like, wait a minute, we throw this kid down a well, we'll get great crops, guys.
Yeah.
Oh shit, they did it. Oh man, they did it. And then,
Yeah, it just happened to rain, right?
Right.
Here's another thing. One of those top 10 things with the conspiracy theories of 2017 that turned out to be true was the fact that the elite and people in power, these sick fucks, drink the blood of young children so they can supposedly live forever. They have that belief in them. So it may not be, devouring children, throwing them down a well, but there is a lot of children. We talked about it on previous shows, Troy. A lot of children throughout just the United States alone, just Washington, D.C. alone, go missing every year. Not just, I can't even imagine what it is all around the world, but there is an epidemic of something like that could be connected to people that still believe this stuff.
Well, I remember answering that question to sort of people about how many go missing, where I took the statistics that are put out by even government agencies. And if you take a 0.01% of what they're saying is going missing in terms of children, you are, I think it's 0.1%, you still ended up with 7 kids a day.
Jesus.
All right. And that's if you give them the benefit of the doubt. 0.01%, I think, was what I ended up. They talk about 750,000 in the United States alone every year. It just basically works out to 7 days. I was astounded when I put the calculator onto the equation, because I was thinking maybe you get 7 a month, something like that, but you still end up with 7 a day. To answer the question where this first really crops up, Babylon. Now, Babylon's influence in these things, including Greek mythology and so on, the god there was called, what was his name now? Shemus was the Babylonian version of Saturn. And effectively, the Babylonian way of worship permeates into what we call the people that we know as the Carthaginians, or what is the name of their ancient culture that the Carthaginians belonged to? Seafaring people in the Middle East at that time, very merchant oriented and money oriented. Yet wherever we find examples of their culture, we find mass graves of children. And this Moloch stuff that you see in Bohemian Grove now goes right back to this Carthaginian worship, where they basically cook babies in a big brass owl, and basically sacrifice that way.
Was it owls or the bulls?
Bulls and owls.
Yeah.
Bulls and owls.
I know the brass bull was a big deal that they used to cook people in all the time.
Yeah,
it was also a version of Moloch. And such, because of the horns that are involved with the Saturn aspect. The owl is also involved in terms of in terms of its symbology with Saturn. But yes, they're basically variations of the same process. Now, the passing of the firstborn the passing of the firstborn through the fires is what it's referred to in the Bible and ancient texts, is what they were practicing at that time. People don't know what possessed these people to actually do that. I'm going to have my first child, great. Somebody to go and chuck into the brass bull or brass owl and let's burn them alive. We don't know what actually possessed them to do so, but something must have told them if they did this, things would be right for them and the rest of their children, as life went along. They did it, and it basically starts there.
It's some closet case priest who got given up for adoption by his own parents, who's got some latent issues that he could never get over. That's usually what it boils down to, is somebody in power.
There's a lot of power in, having the power over life and death is is a powerful symbol in itself.
Yeah.
Anybody who ran with the holy set, they were the ones who had the power. And anybody with any kind of a speech, anybody who had the gift to talk, can pretty much run the place.
Absolutely.
Because now it became a point of, how we sit here and we we throw up stuff, and then we want to be told, prove us wrong. Show me proof that says you're right or you're wrong. Back then, way back in the day, you say something about God, how are you going to prove it? You just have to assume. And shit goes bad, it's the gods. Shit goes sideways, well, it's God. So that was, and how are these guys going to prove it? So they took that guy's word. So if he said, look, man, you got to give your firstborn daughter before the season comes, and then you didn't have a kid to give, and then my crops are going to be shit. So it was, it leads down a road where that's.
I think you've also got to take into account the most deeply ingrained archetype we have, which is the fear of doomsday. All right. So when the Phoenicians, and that's who the people I was trying to remember, when the Phoenicians were doing this, you still had a situation where the planets Venus and Mars were taking close flybys that were causing all kinds of destruction. In Saturn Death Cult, I posit that the destruction of physical Sodom and Gomorrah was basically one of the last pass-bys by Mars that unleashed massive electrical thunderbolts onto the surface of the Earth. Hence the turning people to salt. That kind of process that the electrical arcs can actually produce. But the fear of doomsday in our collective psyche is phenomenal. All these Hollywood movies play still on our fear of doomsday. If you have somebody who can show that they somehow are connected to the idea of a savior from doomsday by producing whatever symbols, knowledge of symbols, that kind of thing, closer to the event in the times of the Phoenicians, and even, to be perfectly honest, as recently as 300-400 years ago, somebody with these incantations and images and symbols had a lot of power over our deep subconscious. They appeared, for all intents and purposes, to be people in the know, people with authority. And if what they said was a way of avoiding yet another doomsday, so be it.
Well, I'll be damned, Troy, if you're going to come on here and talk bad about The Rock and San Andreas at this time right now. I'm here to tell you that right now, buddy. With 3 wrestlers. No, but I definitely, I want to start wrapping up. I want to get all your plugs in. I want to go around and do one more round of questioning here. Each guy get a question in, and I'll thank you again and blow some sunshine your way. But these types of shows that we do, sometimes we just come on and bust chops as wrestlers and stooge off what we've done in chat. A lot of times we're taken aback with a professional like you who's done all of the academic research tonight, and I think our minds are just open and pushed back, and hopefully our listeners are as well. So I want to say thank you, man. So let's get our first plugs in. Let people know where they can pick up these books. We've talked about SaturnDeathCult.com. Where else can we find you, Troy?
Well, SaturnDeathCult.com is the site that I operate off. I produce an ebook that matches the website. The Saturn Death Cult's available on Amazon. I also am the author of Cosmos and Collision, for those who are more academically minded and want to look into the prehistory of our solar system and some pretty radical ideas regards humans and Neanderthals. I'll throw that one out there. Cosmos and Collision is a book that's available on lulu.com with my co-author, Ted Holden, he who first posited the impossible dinosaur scenario in the gravity of today's world. And I've also put together a couple of explanatory videos. If you just do a search on Troy McLaughlin on YouTube, you will see an introductory video to Cosmos and Collision that basically explains a lot of the physics behind the cosmology that we've been discussing today.
Wonderful, man. And I want all of our listeners, if you're into this, just like I feel like this is very much Tim Alberino and our Gen 6 production on the Giants, because we're just taking in so much high-level information here, man. And, this show reminds me a lot of it. Greek God, throw out a question, man. What do you got to say?
All right. Well, hey, this is more of a personal question, Troy. Do you believe in God?
I am a Christian, yes, but I always qualify that by saying I have nothing to do with the churches.
No, that's fine because I'm a Christian as well, and I believe in God, and I don't necessarily believe in evolution. I believe in creation. But how do you feel? I mean, what would you say is God's role in all of this? How does he come into play?
God's role in all of this, just simply providing us with the word by which we can understand our world just a little bit better and our relationships towards other people. In my opinion, the word of the Bible is analogous to what we talk about Saturn being the god of time, which is a measure. The word is ultimately about the rule of law, and that starts with accurate weights and measures, and not the diverse weights and measures of a corrupt system like the debt-based financial system we have today. So getting back to good weights and measures that everybody can trust is where I believe a lot of this actually starts.
Excellent. Big Sal, go for it.
Hold on.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
man. Go ahead. Yeah, no
Dude,
problem.
3 questions?
I know.
What the fuck, man?
I know.
Listen, man, I want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit deeper. Take it easy there.
Buy a microphone, you get a question.
What?
Buy a microphone, you get to ask another question.
Hey, prick.
Go ahead.
What I wanted to ask as well before I was rudely interrupted by Stevie over there was when we weren't part of the solar system with the sun that we know as today as the sun, and we were part of the solar system with Saturn. Were humans on the planet?
Absolutely.
And was it humans? Was it a species that we have today, Homo sapien?
Oh yes, most definitely. Often referred to as Cro-Magnon man, but definitely us.
So, okay, cool. I don't want to ask you another question because I'm gonna get heat.
That's right. You're gonna get heat, brother.
Go.
That's it.
I'll say I anticipate that sort of puts a very interesting set of questions with regards to the biblical account of where humans come from and such. But I would suggest go to Cosmos in Collision, my other book. We discuss the human presence on a primordial Earth in relation to that at length.
That a boy, Troy.
If you want,
Hey,
send us a copy of your book. And we can do a book review on the podcast.
That's what I say. Leave him wanting more, and let him pitch the merch. Let him come get it from him, baby.
Coming from the guy who didn't read the website.
I did read the website.
Yeah.
Give it to him,
Put your
Sally.
drink on top of the book when it comes.
Open some candy on it. Sally, go for it, brother.
Well, actually, I don't want to ask a question because we don't have the time. But
You're welcome.
What I wanted to say was actually when you started talking about the Elizabeth Short, I was reading on the website. I actually read the whole article.
Yes.
The Minotaur, is one of my favorite mythologies, and to see the comparison, just completely shattered and destroyed all of it. Yeah. So I'm like, wow, I never, so growing up being a kid, you look at that sort of thing and you're like, okay, great. It's dark, but not that dark. And it got pretty dark by the end. And that was...
Well, the archetype of the Minotaur, the way I understand it, is the Minotaur is violence, and the labyrinth is the thing we walk through our lives trying to avoid violence. That's the lesson that comes out of that particular story. But the Minotaur itself is heavily Saturnian in origin.
Yeah. That's it's Cronus's grandson.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
That's interesting. Big Stevie, cool, man. You're up, brother. Give it to him.
Oh, I thought Papadon was going to go again.
I got a couple more questions I want to ask.
So if you hurry up,
I just think
tail end it.
We've only done this show together, the four of us, for a few short months, but all these different theories of, we've been through the flat Earth theory, we've gone through hollow Earth, we've gone through, obviously diving into religion, into the New World Order, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, with the one world government. It seems like they all kind of intersect in some way, and they have some sort of foundation, or at least a lot of similarities, which it gets into a point of almost in a way where everybody shuts down because there has to be one right theory. Is there any other theory that you think goes along best, with something that doesn't fall right in line with what we talked about tonight, but you would say, okay, that could kind of meld with what we're talking about today? Obviously not flat Earth, but it's maybe something else.
Yeah. What I would point to is that not so much that it goes along with things, but there are plenty of other theories that are not injurious to Saturn Theory, so to speak. Saturn Theory's strength is just purely trying to give a rational, naturalistic explanation for the madhouse of mythology in terms of that. But in many discussions with people on stories, I get called by people, and they offer so much more information in terms of their people's experience with this stuff. And the term that often comes from the more sort of new agey types is they often talk about resonance and such, right? So what I guess I'm saying is there's a lot of theories out there that have a good resonance with Saturn Theory. The mainstream accretion disk theory is not one of them.
So since I keep going back to the David Icke presentation, is that something with talking about frequency and wavelength and being on a higher frequency? Is that something you agree with?
The holographic universe.
Yeah, he put over that we're hacked, right? We're hacked by Saturn, and that it's actually putting out sound waves, and he showed the sound wave of what's actually reaching us.
Right. Yeah. David has done some amazing stuff, and he goes into areas that I'm not comfortable with because it's just not my knowledge base. I don't have the experience that he does in meeting these different people and such. But the holographic universe ties in very much with a guy called Rupert Sheldrake, he's actually a don down at Cambridge University. He runs the biology department, or did. Rupert Sheldrake has his expression of this stuff with which he pioneered with a guy called Terence McKenna. I don't know if you know that name, but they talk about morphic fields and the idea that yes, frequencies basically. If you can think of the creationist idea, the right frequency downloads a set of templates, and bang, you've got life. That's where Rupert Sheldrake seems to be going, and it's right in the face of Big Bang Theory and evolution. And that's an area I would personally like to know more about, but don't feel qualified to really talk about. But it's exciting stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, David Icke's a pretty interesting character. We're going to try to get him on hopefully sometime in
one of the bravest
2018.
One of the bravest men, what he's had to go through to say his stuff and so on like that. All credit to him. He broke the ice for the rest of us.
Yeah, so many.
I tweet at least once when this information comes out, once every couple of weeks or so. With each passing day, David Icke and Alex Jones seem that much less crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely an Ike breaker.
I like Ike. That's what I was going to do.
Yeah. Conspiracy Tinder. Let's
get it in there. My question's much simpler. If we ever, all four of us, work in Japan or end up working the Bullet Club, can we call ourselves the Saturn Death Cult? With your permission, that's one thing I'm hoping for.
You don't need my permission. Go for it. You'll probably sell me more books.
That's what I'm saying. And one more time.
A wrestling chapter, and if you do, give us a heads up.
ProWrestlingTees.com/Stevie Richards.
I'm going to start a new chapter of the Boy Scouts here. I'm going to name it the Saturn Death Cult. Nice.
It'd be strong. It would be well spelunking, as that's going to be their first merit badge. But
10 meters, 20 meters.
Troy McLaughlin, I want to just say thank you, man. And if you're a fan of what you've heard here today, go back and listen to the Infinite Fringe. You can check them out on Podbean, Infinite Fringe, or at hackerhameen.podbean.com. We covered so much more, and I mean, that would be almost 3.5 hours, and really haven't even scratched the surface. Go to his website, SaturnDeathCult.com. Great visuals, great information about everything from the Gold Age, Bronze Age, Silver Age that really take it to another level and will open up your mind. But Troy, I just want to say thanks again on behalf of all the Horsemen as they pop themselves for coming on with us tonight, man.
Hey, I had a great time. Thanks.
SaturnDeathCult.com. SaturnDeathCult.com. SaturnDeathCult.com.
Absolutely. So, but we're gonna wrap up here. Troy, I'm gonna jump off with you. Anything else you want to let our listeners and fans know where they can find you, or anything you got going on?
No, just what I said before. I just hope it's a journey that they enjoy. It's a journey of the mind, and it'll take you places that will astound you in terms of what's actually out there that we walk around, in everyday life.
We appreciate you, man, bringing your truth and all of this great information to us. Definitely eye-opening, mind-opening, and I can't wait to see the true Saturn Death Cult of the NWO and all these deep state assholes take a big loss this year. I'm looking forward to them all going down, and hopefully on the next Saturnalia we're tacking them up to crosses and driving nails through their hands because they got nothing short of that but deserved. Take care, Troy.
And thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
I think Bing crossed the line with the crucifixion stuff.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Way to not end it hot at all.
Way to scare him off, guy.
Hey, man, I don't give a shit. I'll be the first.
A little bit too hot.
I got a new toolkit. I got a brand new hammer in there. I'm ready to drive some nails. You guys, it's Christian. I'm like, what a
got up to the
work.
Bronze Age of Man on the website.
Yeah, well, you'll get to the rest of it.
You're a fucking liar. You got up to the no.
You read the title.
What were you guys popping so big about? I missed the pop or whatever.
Are we
it
still
was.
on air? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, we're on air still.
Yeah,
you guys were all busting balls. I missed it. I was getting my shit in with Saturn Death Cult to get us over to be able to do new T-shirts.
I'm like a 5-year-old when it comes to gifts.
Oh, you guys doing gift gimmicks? All right.
I can't even watch it because I'm on the phone right now. I don't know what they're laughing at.
Shit.
Every time a message went to the group chat.
I was going to say,
that's
Sally
why I
must have laid down a good one because Stevie's crying over
I don't
here,
know.
man.
I thought you were going to have a pizza delivered or something. Start eating it right on camera. You could have a buffet in front of you.
What were you doing? Cutting up Tic Tacs into lines? You doing lines and Tic Tacs? What are you doing?
No, cut my
Crushing
Quest
up pills?
bar,
Oh.
No, it's a Quest bar.
It's not as bad as Big Ray cutting his nails on the mic that one day. I was ready to fucking snap, dude. Oh man, there's that shit triggers
So
me.
from a 1 to 10, how big a fucking goose do you think he thinks we are?
Right now he's going,
Probably.
what the fuck?
He probably
seven.
more
Bloody
fun
hell.
than
They say-
What
the
the
other.
literal fuck?
It says, I just got a message. I had a great time. Let me know something or other. Let me see here.
I just think he had more fun because it was like real people and not just the straight question answer thing.
And all those other podcasts, that he has to go on is people blowing sunshine or whatever. Like, oh yeah, that's definitely how the fuck it was.
Well, seriously, the guy knows his shit. He knows what he's talking about. So
Yeah.
when he when he does his explanations,
Messages up.
What happened?
it's just it's just one of those things of you don't guys like that. You don't have to fucking kiss his ass. The guy knows he's fucking super smart.
Yeah.
The guy knows his shit.
He could have just
So-
talked space. He didn't have to get into the
No.
cult stuff. You know what I mean? We could have done that's the thing. He's got so much information. You can do 6 hours and
Literally.
still not cover it all. That's why I'm saying go back, hackerhameen.podbean.com, listen to that Infinite Fringe, because we talk more about Christmas and all of the religions, whether it's anything from Jewish to Muslim to Christian religions, and how it's all incorporated in that. If you fold the cross up into a cube, it definitely makes that same shape. So there's a lot
Yeah, that's
there.
the only thing.
There's a
The
lot.
thing about Saturn and once being our sun and all that stuff and everything, you might say, well, there's no proof in that. You might say, well, there's nothing to go off of. That's just a theory. But the symbolism today it's
everywhere.
pretty much all Saturn based. It's so fucking nuts. That's real. I mean, I looked at everything I've seen now, and then we talked about it, I think, on one of our shows. because I was saying you're, Planet X division champion. So, you're talking about the wings, the red wings of Planet X, and the Saturn stuff, like the Earth, Wind, and Fire cover, and, things like that.
The car company Saturn is a fuck
X.
you, right?
What's that?
Just the car company Saturn. They didn't even try and fucking masquerade it, just straight putting it out there. Like, if we just call our shit this, we'll be over with the elites. Fuck it.
But why, when there's brand, everybody wants to stand out as their own brand? Why are the symbols or the basis for the foundation of the symbol or the logo all pretty much based on Saturn?
Yep.
Because they don't think anybody's paying attention to it. But you know why? Because Nancy Brown doesn't know the difference between them.
Nope.
She has zero idea.
That's what I mean. Like, why? Then somebody should follow up with the question, or is it really is there some kind of rule that you have to, if you create a logo and you're in, it has to be based on this?
But he was talking about the higher levels of corporate entities that get in there, and I wanted to swerve and I just didn't get back to it. Was how about that list we put out of all the CEOs who've stepped down in the last 6 months, man? And they're all, I don't know about all, but I'd say I gotta believe 75% all inside of this high level cult of when they get to it, of what they've compromised to get there, and now they're just fucking having a big culling of them. And on the 4chan and Reddit channels, it's saying that it's because there's a lack of adrenochrome, which goes right back to the Saturn death cult of let's torture somebody, pull some adrenaline out of them, so we can
blood.
Yeah, so we can keep ourselves on top and do the vampire power play. This goes right back to the guy that he was talking about chucking kids down a well so he could fucking hold on to his castles. And that didn't work out so well for him because that motherfucker ended up at the short end of a rope too, which is exactly what I'm hoping to happen to all these deep state elites right now. So I don't feel any remorse about botching the finish and going home on crucifixions. Fuck you guys.
Well, when he was talking, I was going to say, when he was talking about about how we were all talking about the church, Stevie brought up from David Icke's video, how all the churches and everybody is connected with all these symbols and all these things. And then that put me back to Tim Alberino they all took the mounds. And they kept them, and everybody shut the fuck up about it. It's on church ground. Go fuck yourself. Can't see.
And why is there super huge humans and super huge lizards at that time? Because gravity might have been far less. And if you look at whatever it is, Devil's Tooth is that in Arizona? Whatever, all these, they're saying those might now be stumps of gigantic trees that grew that were bigger than you could ever imagine. Not even like a redwood in comparison. Or a sequoia would be, a twig compared to some of these trees that were possibly miles high. So, if gravity was different then because of a dwarf sun and we weren't in this heliocentric model, that would lend credence to it, absolutely.
You got to give me this dude's contact info. I got more questions.
Yeah, Troy McLaughlin, man. I don't know if he's on Twitter or not, but I'll definitely send you his email. I feel pretty much the same we did with Tim Alberino, like some dumb fuck wrestlers.
Speaking of dumb fuck wrestling, there's a lot of people, these powerful people, Trump included, Vince included, that always function without sleep. So going back to that drug you're talking about, I mean, for years and years and years, how are you going to be able to function like that and not look like? Yeah. It's not just the HGH or the steroids that are keeping you up multiple nights per week.
Also, there's no side effects of jittery, like if people are doing uppers or coke or something, you could tell they're fucked.
Right.
They're not thinking strate.
Or coke took them so far and they needed something bigger.
I'm really still fucked from it.
Yeah, that's PTSD.
So, yeah,
that's what I mean. Triple H and Stephanie can work out at midnight after flying to fucking Saudi Arabia, coming back, getting 1 hour's sleep, having 3 kids, and getting bench pressing 800 pounds. I mean, come on, man.
Let's. I mean.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. There's the big fucking roster shakeup coming up. You didn't. Pop It On didn't say it, Hunter. I said it.
Yeah, you're not gonna get over in the Royal Rumble at all with that kind of fucking talk. Go ahead,
No,
Pop.
dude, I wasn't even going there. You jumped the gun, dude.
I thought you were talking to me. I'm not.
I was talking to you. You're fucked in
Not
the Royal
anymore.
Rumble. Yeah. Pop it on.
was-
What, they're gonna
Enlighten
keep
me.
me in because I
saying,
want to go out
there's certain
first,
people out there
collect
that
my
don't
money.
need sleep.
I'm gonna walk down the ramp with my roller bag, with my carry-on. Just get eliminated and go right out the building.
Dude, that'd be
Go
the
ahead,
most
Pop.
dope ever. That'd
Pop.
be awesome.
Pop, go ahead, brother.
No, what I was saying is there's guys out there that thrive on work and not sleeping. Like this guy Gary Vanderchuck. You guys know who he is?
Yeah.
Fucking guy doesn't rest. You know what I mean? But I don't think he's affiliated with the fucking elites and drinking blood of little children. I just think certain people just are wired differently. You know, as far as the work ethic or what gets maybe the work ethic and the work itself is what gives them their fucking high and their stimulant and keeps their adrenaline going. You know what I mean? It's a power play. You
I don't know. Once you have a culling of that many CEOs, man, and you know, this is just obviously some 4chan Reddit shit where they're saying the supply of adrenochrome is dried up because of those busts they had in the summer and late spring of all those sex trafficking rings that were either satanic or whatever they were doing. Now they can't get it. I'm not saying that the two are exactly correlated from top CEOs doing that, but it's just an interesting point that was pointed out in those subreddits.
Oh, absolutely. I think those guys are somehow related to what's going on with all the Pizzagate nonsense and Hollywood nonsense, and they just bowed out before they give the company a bad name, so that they don't get the company stock doesn't go down and they
Sure.
don't lose money in the back, on the back end. And I didn't say work ethnic, I said work ethic. You prick. Nice try.
Oh, Papa
Get your
John's
fucking
fucked
shine
either way
box.
because he fucking got canned and he's down with the pizzas, so that guy's double
Mm.
fucked.
I think Gary Vee's a fucking work anyway. He's a gimmick.
Yeah.
He says a lot of he's supposed to good stuff. He's just a fucking fast talker. And by the way, if he works that much and all that stuff, even he said at one point it fucked his whole home life up, his family, his marriage, all that shit.
Yeah.
So when's enough? How much money's enough for him? And if it's some kind of addiction, then he's got a problem.
Yeah, how long till
That's
he
all.
looks
I
back
think,
and
I
goes,
think they're all full of shit. These guys that
Yeah.
I never,
Well,
whatever.
everything in
Him,
moderation,
that
bro.
Ty Lopez guy, and all those fucks. Fuck them.
yeah, how long till they look back and be like, I fucked up missing so many moments based on this to try and get a fucking shoe deal or get this app done. Well, at the end of the day, that didn't give you nearly the fucking satisfaction it would have having the human connection with the people who are closest to you. So,
There's only one Lopez. That's Mario Lopez, Bayside Tigers.
oh, well, Jennifer. Y'all, man, I thought this was
I
good.
thought we were going home there.
A good follow up to what happened on the Infinite Fringe. I know Steve, you listened. I don't know if you guys did too, but there was a lot of great other information in there based on breaking
better
down
than ours.
each religion.
Was it longer?
Yeah, no, it's about the same because we did an hour beforehand and then the show goes live. So it really talks about, everything from Santa Claus and how much of the Saturnalia ritual goes on during Christmas and whatnot, where we got a lot more of, hey, here's what probably fucking happened before we had this sun-centered model, which we don't even think about that. You think about dinosaurs in the daytime or the nighttime doing what have you, as opposed to, and you couldn't even see the moon based on the, yeah, dinosaurs were kayfabed at that time because the moon might have been there, but you couldn't see it based on the purple hue or the light source of what we had at that time, or was it, like you said earlier, Cro-Magnon man or Bigfoot or whatever it was, prehistoric man running around in that type of light. And then not even get to the biblical stuff, but on whatever day it was, let there be light, right? And that was when we got pulled into this heliocentric model. So all that's kind of covered on the other one. So we kind of got science heavy in the beginning of this one, but got a little bit more fuck the Bush regime towards the end, which I'm totally down with.
Oh, fuck them all. Yep. It's also very coincidental how how they were talking about the different mythologies from different places, how it's all the same, how it ties into to Saturn and its place in the universe. And then I was thinking, well, you got Saturn and Venus being the mother, Saturn being the father, and Mars being the son. how that tied into Greek mythology. It also ties into religion with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's a Trinity, stuff like that. Now, I wanted to bring it up, but then I didn't want to catch heat from you guys at the end of the show.
Well, we just ran out of time on here, but I'll definitely send you his email, man. And anybody else, if you got any questions, I'm sure I'll check with Troy, but I'm sure he'd be happy to field them. But SaturnDeathCult.com, you got to check out the website. So much great info on there that's just going to be like rewrite the whole way of your conditioning from kindergarten through college, really, of what you've been taught, man. It's pretty crazy. So really great way to open your mind. Let's shoot around, do plugs real quick, and we'll take it home. Stevie, what's going down, brother?
StevieRichardsFitness.com, 12-week resistance band program. If you buy that, you get access to the SRFHHMG Facebook group. There you go. Just they asked me to send you the fucking link. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. At BWO.
It comes with overview videos, comes with full workouts. You can choose between 5-day plan, 3-day plan, and it is scalable beyond 12 weeks. So there's going to be lots of content coming. So all that plus ProWrestlingTees.com/Stevie Richards and ProWrestlingTees.com. See, I had that fucking anagram or whatever.
Somebody was asking me about your
Sal's Saturn necklace is throwing me off. Look at that thing.
He's got the hexagon necklace.
Oh, I got it. This looks like a D20, right?
Oh,
it does look like a D20.
It does.
Oh.
Yeah,
Awesome.
But in the eye at the North Pole of Saturn it's a hexagon.
That's Storm. That's always going there.
Yeah,
right?
it's a hex.
Forever Storm. That's
right.
awesome.
Forever Storm.
It's crazy. So also at BWO Stevie on Twitter, at Stevie Richards on Instagram, and also now with Russo. You'll plug that at the end, though. Had a lot of fun last night. That's dropping free audio tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or no. If you're live, it's tomorrow. If you're listening on audio, it's already dropped.
Excellent. Yeah, I know they just put out the I retweeted it for the video version of it, but I'm looking forward to hearing how bad we buried ourselves. But I think it was a great first show on Russo. So if you suffered through Raw and SmackDown, definitely check it out. Big Sal, what's going down, man? One die 20.
Plugs I got are Randy Orton's hair plugs.
Well, they look good. They look good on you, brother. The goatee's looking strong over there, shaved up nice.
There it is.
Real good, man. We'll put you over to Hito and King B when I get the chance later this week.
Oh, you know what? I don't need anything else in life. I've arrived because you guys are now working with the pros.
That's right, man, and we'll bring you along, kid. Just stick with us.
Nice. I'll carry your bags.
Well, they're extra heavy because me and GGP got the Dynasty Tag Team Championships, right? GGP, what's going on, brother?
That's right, brother. We're the tag team champions of the world.
Oh, here we go.
We represent Dynasty. We're going to start riots. We're not beating up kids. We may beat up the New Day wearing dinosaur outfits.
That's right.
That's another story.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, that'd have been so much funnier if you weren't talking into a toilet.
What are you talking about? You can't. You can't hear me? Really?
What?
Oh my God.
Classic right here, baby.
Jack off. There we go.
He's suffering from the planned obsolescence of the
Oh,
iPhone still.
so good.
Listen, man, I got the fucking splicer coming, man. They were all sold out everywhere. I had to order it online. It's going to come next week.
The splicer, it's
The splitter, splicer, fucking smoke settler. Anyway, like I was saying, Ben and I are going to fucking smack around everybody at fucking Dynasty, start
That's right.
riots, bitch out the News Day while we're wearing fucking dinosaur costumes. And you're going to like it, Sal. We're not throwing around little children, though. That's not right. Anyhow.
Every New Day joke you get, I'm going to punch a kid.
That's so wrong. It's
Every
funny.
New Day dinosaur joke, I'm going to punch a kid that I see in the street.
Merry New Year.
Yeah.
All right. You go to ProWrestlingTees.com / Greek God Papadon. On Twitter, it's at Greek God Papadon. Facebook, Demetrius Papadoniou or Greek God Papadon. It'll send me right to the page. Let's see. The 12th of January, I'll be at the Elks Lodge in Queens for BCW. 20th of January, I'll be in Florida for Full Throttle Pro Wrestling, wrestling Mike Orlando and Shannon Moore. 27th,
Nice.
I'll be at Deer Park at NYWC. February 17th, I'll be back in Florida for Ronin. And February 24th, I make my return to Jersey All Pro Wrestling. So
I forgot I'm wrestling this Saturday in New Orleans too. I forgot to mention.
Who are you wrestling?
I'm actually in an Extreme Rules match against Jade Spade.
Nice. Jade Spade. Brother. Y'all, that's
Talk about work ethic.
I didn't say work ethic, you motherfucker. I said work ethic.
New day. And, Hacker Hameen, y'all, infidels, UPW. The 13th, I'll be back in where the Rochester child molesters are, slapping the face off of Ghost Dad and the Ghost Warrior. I don't give a goddamn. If you try and jump the rail on me, I'm going to kick the shit out of you morons.
Bring him a toothbrush. He'll be so confused.
Yeah, I'll kick your teeth straight one boot from the hella boots. And then what's up next? Ha Ha Hameen returns with the Honky Tonk Man on January 21st. Infidels at Club Monarch. So come down and get your MK Ultra conditioning. And then February 3rd, back with Dynasty Pro Wrestling and my tag team. No, I'm just putting it out there, hoping that it's February 3rd. They haven't said the January 27th or. Yeah, I'm just gonna. We're the champs. I'll book it. Fuck it.
You're gonna throw a kid down the well and make it happen.
That's right. Yeah. So bring your child over for a $5 face slap or a trip down the well. I'll make all of your New Year's resolutions.
Down the well.
That's right. One-way trip, no comebacks. Y'all infidels. It's Conspiracy Horseman here at twitch.tv/Conspiracy Horseman. Send all of your emails, conspiracyhorseman@gmail.com, and get out there and buy a shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees /Bin Hameen /Stevie Richards /Greek God Papa Don, and hit up my man Big Sal at Dead No Save and let him know that he needs to get himself a ProWrestlingT-shirt.com as well, infidels. Y'all, you've been here exclusively on Twitch.tv. Check it out, hackerhameen.podbean.com. Shows all week long, all free content. We've taken over. No one's stopping us. Russo Brand, Stevie Richards, Hacker Hameen. Y'all.